Good evening. Welcome back to the state-of-the-art newsroom at syracuse.com in downtown Syracuse. I'm John Lammers, the Director of Content here. I hope you watched the debate that took place in this spot just a few minutes ago. I hope you stayed to the end. If you missed it, you can catch it on syracuse.com anytime. To talk about that debate, I'm joined by an impressive panel that have a rich experience in Syracuse and its culture and politics. First is Rita Paniagua, who is on the Syracuse School Board, and so she knows what it's like to run a race in this city, and she's the longtime director of the Spanish Action League, and now is an executive at Molina Healthcare. Thank you for being here. Walt Dixie is been for almost 30 years the executive director of Jubilee Homes, and his Alliance Network has been an important political force in town. Walt, thanks for coming. And Lindsay McCluskey joins us. She worked on Mayor Minor's first campaign, successful campaign, and then became her press secretary. We miss you. She earned a PhD in public affairs and media at LSU, and now teaching at SUNY Oswego. For full disclosure, she is also married to Andy Maxwell, who at one point sought the Democratic nomination for this race, and will be part of the transition. So thanks for being here. Sure. So let's dig into this, and I guess I just wanted to start to hear each of you give me a quick take on what you heard that stood out. And I'll start with you, Rita.
I think that one of the things that stayed with me is how each of the candidates evaluated the position the city is, or lack of, with the office of the governor, and those firm relationships at all levels of government. And throughout the debate, they expressed how they would firm up those positions and to give them a good footing to regain that leadership through the office of the governor at levels of government, whatever that may be.
Yeah, they were very interested in talking about how maybe the governor has money that could help the city out, right?
And we need it.
And we need it. Well,
my first reaction was just seemed a lot of very generality discussion versus a lot more specificity about some how-to, and recognizing that's challenging, really having a real command of some of the topics that I thought they're here. And being from the inner city, poverty is very loosely talked about, but because I know someone in my community, I didn't hear enough about how to really address some of the issues from a business perspective, an employment perspective, with some details. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but I have a thought that we should talk about. But
yeah, all right, good. And Lindsay?
Well, if the debate had ended 5 minutes earlier, I would have said I heard a lot of talk about change. Clearly the candidates are aware of the climate. They've seen your poll, which says more than 60% of voters are looking for change. But since we did have that last 5 minutes, I would say the interaction between what are arguably the two front runners really stood out for me.
Well, let's go there quickly. So what does that say to you? What does that looks change at the end? What does that tell you, Lindsay?
Sure. I think campaigns are a rough go, and we're in the final weeks, and I don't think we've seen a ton of interaction like that between the candidates. I think you see it maybe more on the surface level between their supporters. So when you get into the final weeks of the campaign, things pick up. You're not getting a lot of sleep, and people are obviously trying to differentiate themselves. And on that particular question or that particular exchange, I think they were trying to differentiate themselves in terms of politics, in terms of political affiliation, and in terms of personality.
And that was real, right? That was real, right? Yeah, yeah. What do you think of that, Rita?
Well, I agree with Lindsay. I think that it was more of a personal, it got personal. So I think that the candidates, when you're ahead, you don't need to go there. Yeah. I think that it happened. I think that we need to be a little bit more careful how we present ourselves.
Well, we like that. We like conflict.
Of course we do. It sells
Would you say,
media.
Walt, would you say, does that hurt or help anybody?
Well, I think, if you're talking about change, that's not change. And you're talking about being an outsider, that's not being an outsider in my mind. And I think it takes away from whatever good points you may think about each candidate. It goes back down to me, temperament and composure. So as you move forward, to me, temperament and composure is important. And not to trivialize personality. I mean, I just thought that, Juanita talked about her experience in terms of negotiating and what have you, but I just thought that maybe she needed to go there. I think you're right on that point. And then he had to respond back to that.
And given the nature of politics lately in this town, maybe, conflict is not always seen as a positive thing, right? Yeah. What's, we spent some time, the Kennedys spent some time talking about finances, and you could kind of feel just how difficult that was for them. And maybe, I don't know, do you want to talk about that, Lindsay? Just how, the trouble in talking in concrete terms about such a difficult problem.
Yeah, it's hard to do in a minute. I'll give them that. But I didn't hear a lot of specifics. I heard a lot of talk about putting more cops on the street. And for one new police officer, you'd have to pay about $100,000 for salary, benefits, and training. So how are you going to put, say, 50 new police officers when we already have an $18 million deficit this past year? So I just wanted to hear more specifics. Again, I give them it's harder to do in a 1-minute time frame. So I hope we see more of that over the next couple of weeks, because that's going to be priority one, I think, for the next mayor, is the financial situation.
And it's difficult to talk about raising taxes or cutting spending when you're trying to get votes, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you have to level with the people. I think even though the mayor Minor was right, she said we can't afford it. Even you may see on paper they talked about
40 more police.
40 more police is unrealistic.
Yeah.
Telling the public that we may have to try to do 2 or 3 or 4 or redeploy officers within departments to address some of those issues. One thing they all really missed the boat is that we don't have the kind of relationship with the neighborhoods. And we need to build that relationship to be an extension of the police department to work on some of these complex issues of the nuisance issues. So I listened to one of the candidates, I think Laura talked about crimes went down, but nuisance issues are off the chart. And I don't think they give enough, thought to that in my mind. And so, but being honest with folks, don't set up expectation that you can do more with nothing. It's the same old politics, Be real with people.
Yeah. So, Rita, I want to give you a chance to talk about schools, because you're on the city school board, and there's some discussion about the schools, and I guess I'm going to go in a couple different places. First of all, how much does the mayor really have to say about the schools? Is it?
Well, as it is right now, the school board, it's who has the. We're there to guide the operation, and the superintendent, Jaime Alicea, it's who our employee, and then he has the school district to guide and supervise and develop all of the programming that we do. In terms of what the mayor has to say, definitely it's got to be a relationship that needs to be there, because the budget is approved by the city council. So there's a great influence coming from the mayor's office.
But short of Laura Lyon's idea of taking over the schools, did you hear anything that seemed like
I did hear that,
well,
yes, of
did you
course.
hear anything else, though, that seemed like that the other candidates offered something as mayor that could really have an impact on schools?
I think that at this point, as the discussion went, they're not offering new ideas of how it should run, or bring anything new to the table. I think again that is another conversation that we need a lot more time to discuss. I don't think that the mayor taking over the district is a good idea. Because the mayor has enough to worry about. So we as the school board are that buffer, between the legislative arms, and I think that the mayor should be a resource and for us and the school district. However, not to run it.
Okay.
And I want to add to that.
Sure.
I just think that Laura probably did a disservice to the state of Syracuse. First of all, put my national hat on, we have challenged the district for accountability on suspensions. There are a lot of great things that happen in the district. So you take 33,000 kids, if you have 7 to 8 hiccups, you can't blatantly say the district is not good. You can't, the graduations are improving. There's a lot of support, the county and the school district. There's a lot of good interventions happening, but we don't have the same resources as Liverpool. We are related on state funding. We don't have our fair share of dollars, but in terms of what the district has, I think they do a good job that they do. So, if we're trying to create business, we shouldn't, give this false narrative on it. There's always going to be glitches. She's in the school district, where she used to be at. So I took issue for her generalizing in that context.
And if I can add one more thing, the district, we haven't done we haven't found a good way to market the district. There's great things that happen in the district through all of our buildings, and we always hear about the bad and the ugly, and the good is never highlighted, or very seldomly.
That's a great point. That's a great point. There was a lot of that hour was spent talking about crime and the police department, and that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And maybe I'm going to cue each of you up to just talk a little bit about what you took from that discussion of crime. And Walt, you got something to say.
Putting my NAD hat on for a moment, I think that you're right. You have to have a police chief that commands respect of the rank and file, but also have the respect of the community.
Yes.
Right? Second, you have to have great neighborhood involvement with the police department. And then it's about policies. And you have to make sure if it's tasering, if it's chokeholds, that we eradicate these issues that people see are intrusive of people's constitutional rights. Right. And I think you have to talk about those kind of things to begin to build the kind of trust you need in the community. And you can't do this without the PBAs. PMOT has to be a part of these discussions as well.
It's hard to be specific when you're talking about crime, so we hear more cops, or where's the police chief going to come from, right? That's a way to turn it into specific. Right. But I mean, what did you hear in the discussion of crime?
Yeah, I echo some of what Walt said. I think people recognize that in some ways, in certain areas, crime is down. Obviously, we had a record number of homicides last year, so that's very concerning to people. That's what grabs headlines. And I think you're right, John. When people talk about cops, it means different things to different people, depending on what neighborhood you're in. People have different relationships with police depending on different neighborhoods.
And so I think locking more people up or not locking more people up, right? Depending on where you are.
Well, and I think people, I spent an entire year writing a dissertation about law enforcement, public relations, and so I know from talking to departments across the country that there are a lot of new things that we could do here to kind of start on the grassroots level to engage more people at the neighborhood level. Of course, that does start with leadership at the top, with the police chief, with the mayor buying into that. So I'd like to also kind of hear more about the actual concrete ways they plan to engage people in the community.
I think that definitely we need to build trust between the community and the police department within these neighborhoods. Somebody mentioned, I don't know if it was towards this, regarding this point, that they would like to see more of the organizations and community initiatives be put in place and support that. Okay. And there are many organizations, you run one of them, Walt, that can do that job.
We covered a lot of ground. And
hold on, I want to add this. And also, they didn't talk about the diversity in the police department in terms of the mid-management positions. And constantly trying to change that culture, you have to have people that come from our lenses as well, begin to educate and have this cross dynamics. And you don't have it. You also, the concern, fire and police, people of color are aging out, and therefore there's not a real strategic strategy to mobilize to bring more recruitment in. They talk about recruitment, but you look at the last 3 classes, it doesn't reflect more of a diversity of a community.
Right. All right, I want to give you a chance to make any other points you'd like to make. What else did you hear? What else did you want to speak to from that?
Well, do you want to
go? Sure. One of the things that stayed with me was in the discussion around the jobs that are out there in Syracuse, and our workforce is not skilled or ready to be able to take on those jobs, and how, I mean, we need to figure out how to train our people to be able to get employed.
Not a lot of discussion about jobs.
Right. Not a lot of discussion about
right.
jobs.
So, so when you look from the African American and Hispanic community, let's look at price rate. You know, we heard a lot of stories about this price rate story, that 100 jobs was created, it built pride into a community, but also the developer gave back, Jubilee gave back. So when I listened to the governor, talk about $49 million at the airport, I went there, it's a nice airport. But I think, proportionally speaking, there's the jury defenses will talk about this. This is not anti-Cuomo, but if we're giving billions of tax incentives to corporations and we don't see a big return on that, as well as the construction jobs and all that, we could do better by giving companies incentivized to come on South Ave, Salina, Geddes, and give a tax credit to the businesses for the employees. We'll see more, we can create more jobs, low paid, good middle class jobs in our community. And I think we got to think out of the box to how do we redistribute our state dollars. So I know we got to be nice to the government at the same time. We got to do some of the small, Jim Washington say always singles and doubles, smaller projects go along.
All right, and Lindsay, I know you talked about there was a group of people that weren't mentioned much here.
Sure, and I think, I don't think any of the questions necessarily went right to this issue, but I would have liked to hear more about, how are we going to keep people here? How are we going to keep our booming downtown population? How are we going to keep them here? Are they going to move to Strathmore? Are they going to move to the east side? Or are they going to move to Baldwinsville? Or are they going to move to North Carolina? How are we going to keep them here? So I hope that we hear more about that over the next couple weeks, because I think that's really important.
What would be the kind of thing you could hear that would speak to that?
Well, and it gets to what they're talking about. And jobs, our schools, and all of those quality of life issues certainly add up to that, but more directly talking to incentivizing people to stay here, how you're going to reach out to them. So I would like to hear that more.
Okay. I think we are out of time.
What? Go Yankees!
Go Yankees!
I think we're out of time, and so I'm going to close up here.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you. That was terrific, and thanks for coming in. I guess, again, our Rita Paniagua, Walt Dixie, and Lindsay McCluskey. If you missed any part of this special report all night, you can go back to syracuse.com and find it again. I'd ask you to follow us all the way up through the election at syracuse.com and the Post-Standard. We'll have breaking news, analysis, lots of opinion. We're doing another poll, and we'll have an endorsement. But don't just read us. Join in. We have lots of ways in which you can comment on this race and talk about what's important to you. Take advantage of it. This is a kind of serious business that's going on in this race, and let your voice be heard. I think we're done. From the newsroom of syracuse.com, I'm John Lammers. Good night, everybody.
Good job.